Okie doke. Cool. Welcome everyone to the tooling working group meeting. I'll share my screen and then we can go through um, the agenda. Cool. Can you see my screen?
We can.
We can.
Cool. If maybe someone else could fill in the attendance. I don't know how important it is to keeping attendance. We were doing it based on some instinct that it might be useful information. It might still be, but it's a little hard to do while I'm screen sharing and going through the agenda.
All right. Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That'd just be helpful if we want to keep doing it. Okay, so last meeting's action items. We did not have any explicitly mentioned action items from last meeting, so that's a quick one on that. Does anyone remember anything that came up last time that we were supposed to address that I didn't write down? Okay. We don't have a specific presentation this week. If anyone wanted to show and tell anything, this would be a good time for it. But otherwise, we can just move on. Cool. All right, might as well get straight on to project updates. That's good. This one will be a pretty quick one, I think. If we can get someone to give us an update on what's been going on with ROS bag over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, we got the regressions solved and CLI is now in. I guess that's all we have to report.
Cool, that's pretty good.
It works, and it works pretty well.
Also, Karsten, I saw some conversation going on with the transaction-based rights. Is there anything we should know about there?
There's no update regarding what we've discussed last meeting. I haven't had time to wrap my head around it, but
Gotcha. I saw some updates come through on the conversation, but I hadn't read them. Okay. If there's nothing concrete there, then that's fine. For cross compile, I've been doing some refactoring work in preparation to make it be more incremental builds, because right now the problem is whenever you change a source file, it has to reinstall all the raw step dependencies, which is a really bad experience. So I've merged a few PRs leading up to having it cache the raw step dependencies so that when you only change sources and don't change the dependencies, it doesn't have to do that and it'll just rebuild your workspace. So we're close, but I've discovered a couple issues along the way. So just that required me to go in and do bug fixes instead of actually building the feature. But progress towards incremental builds. Cool. And we got a lot of attention on the discourse post after last week, which was really nice. Got a lot of those likes, which was fun. And then some bug reports and pull requests came in right away. So it was nice to get the view on that.
Is this with
what's up?
This is the GitHub action post?
No, the cross compile post. It was like a week or two ago. Well, we will go over the GitHub action post too, because that was like yesterday or something, right?
Yeah. Oh.
A couple days ago. Yeah. Okay. First, though, system metrics. Any progress?
So I think that we haven't been doing a lot of development, but something we could certainly mention here is that so we are gonna include in system metrics something akin to topic statistics in ROS1, so that people can get track can keep track of how many messages is sent on each topic, the bandwidth, and a few other things.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, and then GitHub Actions. We have made some progress in the last 2 weeks. I think Amos and Thomas, you could probably let us know what we've gotten there.
Yeah, we're working on a CloudWatch and SES GitHub action. we're going to be publishing. So right now they're published in ROS tooling, but later on they're probably going to be migrated to AWS Robotics. We've been using these to track the status of builds and essentially have a way of monitoring when builds succeed or fail. Ideally, down the line, we want to have some sort of like dashboard people can see and determine like what the status of packages are in GitHub, how they've been like succeeding or failing over time, and this will be helpful for the community to see the health of the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think maybe it's it would be useful for the audience here to just go through the setup we're trying to get here. So basically, what we're doing here is building GitHub Actions, which can send metrics to CloudWatch metrics. So if you have an AWS account, you can get data on your CI behavior. Typically, it could be whether or not your test failed, whether or not your build failed, the length of your build time, those type of things, and obviously categorized by, if it's a PR and so on and so on. And so what it gives us is the ability to set up alarms on the CI in a much more robust way than just trying to send out emails, especially because CloudWatch metrics allow you to have complex logic so that only start emailing or paging people if your tests are failing twice or 3 times in a row, for instance. It's what we are gonna use to make sure that all of our builds in the ROS tooling working group in particular, but generally in the team, will be healthy. So the goal is for us to get paged if those builds start failing reliably. Dirk, something that may impact you on your side is that, so we're going to enable that for Colcon repositories too. So Colcon bundle, Colcon ROS bundle will have those actions enabled. And I think all of that is open source, so anyone could just spin up an AWS account, and probably gonna be free because given the free tier, it would be unlikely you'd need more resources than that for a simple open source project.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, the free tier gets you pretty far. Okay, that's that for that. Let's take a look at our community.
I've got one quick question regarding GitHub Actions. I hope it's the right time to talk about this.
That's fine. Yeah.
About the project board review though, but so we've ramped up some effort for ROS control over the last couple of weeks, and we had some issues with the GitHub Actions regarding backport PRs or backport branches essentially. Is there a way that I can specify which branch and which ROS 2 version I want to use in GitHub Actions? Because we've seen especially the linters and stuff have changed over the last ROS 2 masters compared to Dashing and Eloquent. And I really couldn't figure out a way to easily specify which branch I want to use. An easy way for doing this?
Yeah, so if you could open the action.yml, it's probably the easiest way. So really what it boils down to is you got,
it's a source binary, ROS binary installation.
Well, it's gonna be 2 things, right?
Yeah.
So there is as every time it's a mix of what are you getting from a binary and what are you getting from source. So your source ROS binary installation is that as long as your worker has a particular version of ROS or ROS2 installed, you can set that into your source ROS binary installation, and that's gonna source that first. So that's gonna, I don't know, if you're on a release branch and you want to test against packages that you're installing from, I don't know, Eloquent or Dashing, then I would set source ROS binary installation to Eloquent on that particular branch. And then the second part is a VCS repo file URL. So depending on what you want to do, so you can see the default value is, compiling ROS2 from source, on master, but you could just put a gist on GitHub, containing whatever repo file you want to use, or point that to Dashing or Eloquent. And then in this case, you're gonna get a VCS checkout of whatever is in what you're specifying, and the package under test is gonna be added on top of this workspace.
Okay, and I can specify the values I want per repo, right? So if I see, like, I don't have to specify all the values I'm seeing here.
You can, well, so I think what it is here is you can put in any repos file you want. So you can just upload that as a gist and.
Yeah, and I think there is a dashing.repos somewhere.
Yeah,
there
there's
is.
no dashing repos file, Eloquent for all
Yeah.
for all releases.
Yeah.
It might also be good to consider using ROS install generator for that, because all that information is available in the ROS distro, right?
Yep.
Yep. No, agreed.
Yeah, so I think maybe what we could do here is document these settings they're documented in here, but maybe just make their make them visible in the README or something.
Yeah. Oh, and to your point, Dirk. So there is also something is that it's a URL here, but it does not need to. You can also point that to a file. So you can just you can just have your GitHub action, your GitHub workflow. Invoke ROS install generator, put that somewhere, and then pass the generated file as an input of this action. If you go to the second line, there is the URL may point to a local file such as file pass to file.txt. So you could already use ROS install generator if you'd like to.
Yep.
Or commit directly into your repository a particular repo file that you want for whatever reason.
For that branch.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah. Okay. So it looks like it is configurable, just not immediately obvious.
Yeah, we should put that in the doc. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Anything else anyone wanted to talk about the GitHub Actions before we move on?
I think there was, so Karsten, I know there was also a bug in ROS control. I believe it was failing on Mac, if I remember correctly. I did open up a ticket to track that. And so just as an FYI, we're looking into it.
Yeah, there was some hiccup in the ROS2 build farm for Macs as well. I think that's resolved right now, so maybe we can give that another shot to re-enable them.
All right. Yeah, I'll give that a shot when I get the chance.
Okay. Thanks.
Cool. Let's take a look at the community then. Oh look, I got us a new logo. So that's fun. Slapped that together last week sometime, and it's now in the whatever ROS infrastructure artwork repo. So I enjoyed that. Looking at community, we've got pull requests. I made a change to kind of try to get us closer in line with the security working group, how they define roles. So it's basically the same. I just slightly reworded how the roles are, and then I removed a lot of the logic around voting and copied the TSC on how they worded that, which is we aim to operate by consensus, and if you can't, then just do a simple majority vote. Instead of, I had put in something mildly complicated, which on second thought seemed completely unnecessary. So if anyone's got any concerns about this governance model stuff, please just comment on the PR. Otherwise, I'll probably merge it on Monday. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
And then issues. Request, add project, launch ROS sandbox, which is coming over from, it was in the security working group. It's something that we built before ROSCON last year partially in order to support the Turtlebot security demo, which lets us, it spins up Docker containers and runs ROS launch inside of them, which is sort of a little bit different than, there was some Docker or some container orchestration conversation happening for, launch across multi-machine stuff but I don't know if any of that conversation has gotten concrete. But this little tool does a thing, and it was pretty useful. You could put, a CPU limiting on it, and it only had exactly what you wanted running. So I guess what did we say our process was for this? Just simple. Does anyone object to adding this project to the working group? I don't think there are really any users, so there's really not much maintenance burden right now. Okay, with no objections, I'm going to say approved. Cool. And then let's look at our project board. It should be in slightly better state than it was. What is this? Oh, spam calls. Love them. I get like 5 a day. Do you guys get like 1 million spam calls every day?
It rotates for me.
Okay, well, one thing I can't figure out here is why this won't fill up my whole screen.
Refresh.
Yeah.
Do you have a JavaScript blocker or anything?
I wouldn't be able to see any of this if there was a JavaScript blocker. Yeah, okay. Something. Cool. So we are looking at right now ROS bag, system metrics collector, and cross compile. I don't think that the GitHub Actions have a groomed backlog, so we'll take a look at. Actually, you know what? I wanted to go through cross compile, system metrics collector, but we didn't have a chance to last week. So I'm just going to look at the ones that we've actually taken some time with. To explain these columns, well, in progress is clear, review is clear. Backlog has a slightly different meaning than the backlog label that's used on the OSRF triage, and the backlog means things that we have prioritized. So these are in order of how important we think they are right now, at least within a given project. And if someone is looking for something to do to help out, these are the highest value things that you can pull off the top of the backlog. The icebox, on the other hand, is things that we don't have a plan to contribute any resources to concretely. And if community members want to help, that's awesome. But we don't want to close them because they do seem like valid improvements. New issues are things that have come in that we haven't looked at yet. So that's what I'd like to do in this meeting is take a quick look at what's in review progress, and then try to take care of the new issues and empty out that column if we can. So for review, it's some of these same ROSBEG ones that we've been looking at. This fixed throw in playback, you guys are making active progress on that, right?
That one? Yeah, I'm gonna add a unit test probably today.
Okay, just making sure it's live. And then this one for cross compile, I just need a sign off on it. I identified a bug that was passing through all our end-to-end tests, added a failing case, and fixed it. So it's pretty straightforward. And then in progress, we've got compression options. Who's this? Oh, that's Zach.
That's a request for compression messages. I haven't worked on that lately. Have you done any work on that?
I do have a POC.
Well, is this something that is actually on our queue right now, or is it not really in progress?
No, I think, is this the message one?
It's the message one.
Yeah.
Oh no, then that's not in progress.
Okay, I'm gonna put it back. Improved Python API. Someone I think is working on this, but I don't have insight into what Jacob or Mabel are working on. Anyone? No. Okay, I'll leave it there for now. This one, resolving workarounds in ROSBEG 2 tests. Zach.
And Oz, you had the Python stuff.
Yeah. So for context here, the end-to-end test in ROSBEG 2 require sending a SIGINT for closing the process when running a ROS2bag command. Windows does not support Control C or SIGINT for that matter. Programmatically. It does not support SIGINT programmatically. They do have a special Control C event that I was able to use in PyTest. I wasn't able to get this working with CoContest for some reason, although it works fine with PyTest. So I think maybe what I'll do is just document a potential approach moving forward, and then maybe someone else might have some insight on how to better write the end-to-end tests.
Okay, great.
So I ran into a similar situation for a Gazebo ROS package test. And I think actually the right approach here for all these end-to-end tests is actually using ROS launch testing. Because like launch testing, we basically have all these things in place to send in SIG-ins and then escalate this to SIG-term and SIG-kill and all of that. And as far as I know, maybe Dirk knows more about this, but like I think they all work pretty neatly cross-platform.
Okay, that's good. So that's actually also some context for why I emailed you, Carsten, earlier. If we can rewrite the end-to-end test with Python, since using, like you said, ROS launch testing or whatever is out there, it would be much better to have stable end-to-end tests.
Yeah, I think this makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, cool. And then I'm working on the incremental thing. I've been making progress one PR at a time towards it. My initial one turned into 3, and I think that it may be 4 actually, but progress being made. The code is cleaning up and the workflows are getting faster. So then the backlog, we've just got that in an order, mostly trying to leave it to sub-project owners to at least keep within a project the priorities straight. So if we look at, say, just cross-compile, I've got everything in here in the order that I think we need to address it. So if anyone ever feels like helping, then that's great. If not, that's the order I will be working on them in. Okay, so now for new issues, compress files and messages asynchronously. You do not need to add. Oh, is backlog coming from the OSRF meeting? No, you added this on us.
Yeah, so I think this was like, we discussed this, I think, during the ROS Bag 2 grooming. Is essentially compressing files and messages asynchronously. This is just,
So let's, this sounds like something we do want to do because right now we blow up when the file size is too big, right?
Yeah, and I opened up another ticket for streaming, so streaming compression. So rather than loading everything in memory at once, you just, you stream the buffer for compression.
Yep. Cool. Looks good to me. You're using the new templates. Oh yeah, I added issue templates to ROS Bag 2, and I added the DCO check to all of the ROS tooling repositories. So that's just new process stuff. Hopefully it should help with just increasing consistency. Let's see, compression options for high throughput environments. What's the question here?
I'm not sure.
Okay, you added a lot.
Oh, yeah. So this is breaking down one of the requests from a previous issue. So basically, this is a request to specify what happens when messages are dropped or you have an unknown message type. Like, do you store it? Do you drop it? Or do you leave it uncompressed? What do you want the behavior to be? It's just defining it from the CLI essentially.
Okay, so it sounds like this needs a decision, but on how we want to or what options we want to provide. But I don't see us working on this anytime soon. I don't know. I'm inclined towards the icebox. What do you think, Karsten?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, we can put it in the icebox. I guess for now.
Yeah, I mean, as always, we should be readdressing what's in there now and then to make sure that we don't want issues that stay open for years. There's just no point. So, compression options for specific compression formats.
Again, this was another request from the issue, from issue number 152 is basically, do we want to have compression format specific options? So like, let's say there's like a Z standard compression level, and maybe like some other compression algorithm like Snappy might have its own configuration parameters. Do we want to enable that through the CLI?
That's something that makes sense, that we want to provide users options to be a power user.
Yeah.
I assume we're providing a default.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I assume that we'll provide a default configuration for every, or we'll expect a default configuration for every compression plugin.
Exactly. And I mean, I think since this, like you said, is a power user sort of configuration, maybe we want, instead of using the CLI, we can use the metadata, and that way we don't need to like expose it.
The user doesn't write up metadata ahead of time. It gets created at record time, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
So it would have to be an input option to record, but that's fine. That can be figured out. However, I don't see us needing to expose this anytime soon. Until we get, I don't know, more requests for it. Like someone pipes in here and is like, I absolutely need this for my use case. Until then, I don't see it as a priority.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to leave these open and then just collect feedback as you move along.
Okay. Cannot specify log level via CLI. I remember seeing this one. And I think someone was saying this was a more generic problem across a few things, but this seems like a bug, and I think we should always prioritize bugs. Any disagreement with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, it seems like a ROS2 problem. I mean, like, shouldn't there some kind of like generic solution for all nodes? And is it something we should try to get before F if it's easy enough?
I mean, doesn't this work on normal nodes? I have used log level on my ROS2 things.
Yeah, it works. It works with normal nodes. It works with launch. With ROS2 bag, I think what we need, I'm not too familiar with what we need to do, but maybe just somewhere in ROS2 bag we need to add like a keyword or something.
But one of the shortcomings for that is that the whole log level setting is like a global stuff, right? So you cannot, like you can do in ROS1, go to a specific logger and say this one should be in for a debug. It's like everything or nothing, which is a big limitation. Because a lot of times you go to in for a debug, you get flooded with so much stuff you don't care about.
Yeah.
I
guess that's true. It's just
however, the ability to get debug at all is probably better than not.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Oh yeah, except this bug really, is really mostly affecting developers. Probably, like the average user doesn't care about debugs, so that makes me deprioritize it just a little bit. Like it's a bug.
Yeah,
but
just to give you some context, I ran into that when I was testing ROSBag 2, and I just flipped the statements I cared about to info and rebuilt it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a huge blocker.
Okay, I'm just gonna put it at the bottom of the back.
Well, yeah, and just one thing on that is that, something which is gonna be impacting us is once F is out, F is gonna be out for a while. And not having that is going to drastically reduce the ability of customers to actually provide us with meaningful bug reports.
Except this is probably not an API changing fix, right?
And you're changing the CLI. The CLI is your API if you have a binary. I mean, but I
Well,
understand we could do that after. I mean, but it's true. It's not. It's additive, so you don't necessarily break
well,
it.
I don't even know if it's additive. There's an expectation of what the CLI options do right now. They're not doing that, and if you fix it to do what people expect them to do, then that's not actually changing the interface. It's just making the interface do the correct thing, right?
All right, I'm convinced.
Okay. Playback rate / speed. I just logged a couple things I noticed were missing, so we would have them. I realize it's not immediate priority, but I like the playback speed. So maybe I'll just put help wanted and move these things to the not immediate priorities.
Yeah.
Because I also put looping playback, which I don't think we had another issue for.
Oh yeah, this one is tremendously useful.
Yeah, so you can also work around it though by like putting ROSbeg play into a while loop like on your shell.
I guess so.
Yeah, so it's not like killer, but it's useful to have.
That workaround does not work if you expect the publisher to stay online, because it basically turns off your publisher and recreates it. So that might lose your first messages. So I don't think that's a proper workaround if you really need to run it in a loop.
It's not a proper. Yeah, that's a good point. You can mostly get the data, but it's not going to be nearly as reliable as a looping play.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then the periodic build of ROSbeg 2 is currently failing. Is this true still?
No, it is fixed.
Oh, okay. Then
it needs to be closed.
Yay!
I'll try and find when it actually fixed.
That's okay. It's fixed.
Okay.
Great. Okay, and then for some reason, weird. Okay, that's just ZenHub plugin bugs. Great. Thank you, everyone, for helping me triage what's going on here. I'd like to also get our system metrics collector repo into a similar state so that next meeting we can include it in here. I like having new issues be empty. I like having this backlog be in some order. When I'm thinking about how to improve cross-compile, it's nice to be able to just pull something off the top. Same with the ROSbeg. So hopefully we need to make this board visible somehow to potential new people, though. Although I have the feeling that generally how it works out here in open source land is that when someone wants a feature, that's what they build, and they're not looking for work. However, I want to encourage contributions.
Maybe you could post a screenshot of the board on the Discourse post just to tell people, hey, we have a board, it looks like that, click on the link.
Well, I can also just, I can post a screenshot and this ZenHub link so they don't have to have the plugin to use it.
Yeah, but you don't need the plugin, you can directly go to the website.
That's what I meant. If you go straight to the site.
Yeah, people just don't think of, clicking on the link. Yeah. All right.
Great. Project review. Yeah.
Well, this is one thing just for context, not related to the tooling group, but because you mentioned the loop playback, and we used that one or try to use that one for like a recent bug hunt, and maybe just for you guys for awareness, we figured out that whenever you send large data like over 64 kilobytes, so it needs to be fragmented with fast.abs, and your message increases like in size, so you send like a few whatever point clouds, and then you send on the same topic a point cloud which is bigger. then you might run into memory corruption with FastRDPS. So there is a pull request on FastRDPS for fixing that. But if you run into any problems like black memory problems, sec faults with like sending increasingly large data, just for aware that's affecting Eloquent and Master at the moment.
Okay.
Because I know because for ROS-beg usually you record a lot of data, and I just thought it might be something people run into.
Cool. Thanks for the heads up.
I don't know if you care about the number. I think it's 1013 on the FastRDPS repo. It hopefully gets merged in the next couple of days, and then we will do a new release. But just if you run into that, don't spend hours on it.
Yeah. And did the nightly build get fixed? I know that FastRDPS was breaking all of the release builds.
You mean that it didn't build, or?
Yeah.
No, I think the not building part was already fixed a couple of days ago. Last night,
Okay.
I think most nightlies failed because our office just lost connectivity.
Gotcha. Okay.
The latest change which is still failing is the current state on Master or on 19X, which we use on Master for FastRDPS, is breaking cross-vendor communication with Connext. But there's also a pull request for that one. And as soon as FastRDPS or Eprosima decides how those two pull requests get merged, we'll probably just move forward to the latest commit for Master. And for Eloquent, I don't know if we move forward or if we just make our own fork with the previous state plus the bug fix.
Yeah, I kind of think that I had this thought about after watching it make all of the builds go down one night that it was feeling like we should maybe pin to a specific like static commit at any given time and only consciously update, just because they're not going through exactly the same quality hoops that the rest of our packages are.
Yeah, it's the trade-off, right? I mean, yeah, it's nice if you pin it. We don't run into those like sudden they commit something and it breaks things, which they didn't know, and we notice right away.
Yeah.
The downside is somebody has to actively push things forward on a regular basis, because
Yeah.
otherwise you do it after like 6 months for a new release and you're like facing like 6 months of regression. But no,
Yeah.
I agree. Especially for released distros like Eloquent, I think it makes sense to like pin. We have it already pinned to a tag, but even like for Master, it might be a better option because we have seen that kind of breakage in the last few months a few times.
Yeah, we saw it break on
Yeah.
the tag.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think
I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll probably look at that one next week and make a call, and I can update next meeting if we actually pinned it.
That sounds good. Oh yeah, so for anyone who hasn't seen this board, it's also on the ROS tooling thing. We're using it for just a place to put a dashboard, and this is sort of the builds that we pay attention to with our on-call person, which is a full-time job that everyone spends 1 week on in a rotation, and we take a look. These are the builds that we watch and try to do what we can to fix them when there's small things, but it's kind of a handy little dashboard for a useful overview of builds. The CI.ROS is also useful. I like having the grid.
One question for your on-call role. I mean, we're probably going to do something very similar where you have one person who's like in charge of like monitoring all the farms, not only for us, but also for Gazebo. Because we notice like if something goes bad and nobody has enough priority time to work on it, it might be like not only a day, it might be 2 days, 3 days until it gets resolved.
Yep.
So how does that work for your on-call? Because I know I had like one case recently where I sent like the email to your on-call group, and like 2 days later I didn't hear anything back from my email. And then basically I poked Emerson, and you got the right response. But I was just wondering how that usually works for this role with the emails.
So you should have usually gotten a response faster than that. What happened was it got forwarded internally to like, oh, does anyone understand about this? And then we forgot about it. So that was just our bad. We dropped the ball on responding to you. It got circulated internally.
I know how it goes. It's usually like, oh, we don't know what to answer, and then you end up like not sending an answer because you don't know what to say.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what happened there, and that's our fault. You should expect to normally get a response if you ping the on-call.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be similar responsive in the future if we have that role.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we like to have the, it kind of, it doesn't feel very fun when you're on call, but it's nice having someone whose full-time job it is to take care of these things, so that effort goes into stuff that no one was ever going to pay attention to otherwise. Like you were saying, like it doesn't feel like a priority compared to whatever feature you are assigned to build right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's stuff like on the 32-bit Linux packaging build, we had 6 warnings, and it happens to be in Cyclone DDS. I fixed 2 of them last week by doing a little PR, and so hopefully we whittled these things down to green a bit at a time.
Yeah, and honestly, it also helps for the planning, because we basically make all the assumption for planning work for the teams that we have -1 of capacity, so that actually there is always one engineer free to jump on things, and that's really helping to make sure we don't overcommit too.
Yeah, it's been nice.
Just a heads up, I don't know if that already has happened, but it might be that Louise will ask you guys from AWS, like if that's something AWS is interested to at least partially cover with resources. Because at the moment, I think we committed internally for a full FTE.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in that meeting where we discussed that, there was a big hesitation that people think like, oh, well, sure, but then that will be paid by OSRF's internal stuff completely, and people expect that to continue, and that could be like problematic going forward. So it might be that Louise is going to reach out to you guys and say, hey, would you contribute a quarter or half person? And we do the same with other customers, plus some of our own resources to kind of mix it.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that in our one-on-one meeting, I think.
Mm-hmm, that conversation is already going on. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect. Sorry, Louise. I didn't know you're on the call. I'm just on the phone.
No
I don't
problem.
see who's online.
Hello.
Cool.
Hey.
Okay. Any other topics anyone wanted to bring up today?
The thing on GitHub Actions.
Yeah.
I wanted to run past the Circle CI stuff. Like, so I've been working with the CI or the navigation group for maybe a year about now, and so we have a pretty nice Circle CI setup, and so there's all these lessons I've learned and optimizations, and I've been thinking of porting it to GitHub Actions, and I'd like to help guide the action structure. And like, there's like, I think you already have this sort of going of these composable functions with primitives, and what goes into compiling a ROS2 workspace. But I've also, I don't know how much you're also leveraging Docker for caching. So I'm going to do like a more formal post, but I just keep on running out of time. Maybe I could also sync with some of the GitHub Action authors, either now or sometime later.
Yeah, I think that there'd be value to that. And if there's things that you discover importing to Actions that we're not doing right now, I think it'd be awesome to contribute it in here so that the tooling actions could all meet the navigation use case.
Yeah,
I can.
Sorry, go ahead, Rafa.
Well, maybe after you're done, I can give a 40,000 feet overview on screen share if you want to see it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 10 minutes now if you want to do that.
All right. So I'm in Chrome. How do I share my screen more? Do you have to elect me to share my screen?
You should be able to take over. Does it not give you that option?
Oh, there it is. Take over screen share. You're in progress, so I think you have to give it up.
I have given it up.
There. Okay. You see my screen?
I think we will in a moment. Not positive, though.
So to start with, anyway, you can go to the navigation repo under ROS Planning Navigation 2. And just about everything is either contained in the .circle.ci file or the Docker file. The Docker file has also some pretty cool optimizations I want to write about, such as like using multi-stages to cache the package XMLs of all the packages that you're importing. So like you mentioned earlier in your cross-compile build, like where if you edit a source file, you only want to break the Docker build up to the point where it's copying the source and not have to reinstall the dependencies.
Yep.
So this helps you avoid breaking the ROS step there. If we go into the Circle CI config, it's kind of long, but don't be scared. Just kind of scroll to the bottom. It's kind of easier to read it backwards. So here's our jobs. So we have like debug and release jobs, but then we also have release jobs for every RMW implementation. So that helps us. If I go to an example workflow, that helps us test every RMW implementation available, because like in the past we've had some issues where RMW was working or Connect was working, but fast RTPS wasn't, vice versa. So that's helpful to kind of tease out those inconsistencies. And just like I think Actions, Circle CI supports like Docker container natively, so you don't have to spin up the whole VM. So we have different executor types. You know, we have one for our debugger and one for our release build, and we can pass different mixin flags to each. And then we have one for our docs that we're building. So here's a kind of a workflow of our jobs. So in a debug build, it's going to use our debugX. It's going to check out the source. It's going to set up dependencies, and it's going to build the source. That's kind of straightforward. But then this is all kind of functional. So then that kind of breaks up into something more. And then this is all using YAML and references. So that's how it's kind of easy to make these kind of easier to read. So in the checkout to source, we do some pre-checkout stuff, some on-checkout, and some post-checkout. For the set up dependencies, navigation has a pretty deep stack. So we use an underlay to kind of pre-cache the building of like behavior trees and gazebo ROS and all that stuff. So we have to install those dependencies. We can potentially restore the cache if we've already built that workspace. We can get cache stats and seeing like, you know, I think I'm just looking at the CC cache stats. This is also all using CC cache. So we can check that, you know, and build the builds faster when source does change. We set up the overlay, and then we install the overlay dependencies, and then we set up and sub the overlay itself. And overlay is what contains the navigation to code. And this sort of gets into the weeds. I probably won't dive into it too deeply, but there's other optimizations you're doing too, like for Copen test. With one thing, I'm not sure if the GitHub Actions is an equivalent, is that you can have a pipeline like this, but each particular job can also be parallelized. So here what we're doing is we're enumerating the number of packages that we want to test, and then we split. And we're also splitting by test time. So because if you're due diligent in that your tests are self-reporting their test time, and the XML was it that Java XML kind of thing output? That's what Circle CI is looking at to like do all the pretty like this test failed or whatnot. That's where it's getting the timing, the test report. It can use that to split the jobs and test in parallel, because like it's kind of hard to test in parallel with one container using ROS because you have the crosstalk issues, right? But you can do parallel tests if you split the containers, and this is what Circle CI allows you to do. But we're also we're splitting across time, so jobs that take a small amount of time get all put on one container and whatnot. So you can set the you can parameterize the N on, how parallelized you want your executors to work. I forget where it is, but yeah, it's a parameter. So yeah, there's all these little optimizations I'd like to mention and see if we can kind of get those into GitHub Actions.
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty nice. I think that most of what you're mentioning here could be ported. We need to, give it a hard look to see how, what kind of impact it would have on the current infrastructure. But I mean, I think the only thing that would require significant work would be splitting tests among multiple workers. There is a notion of dependent jobs, and in GitHub Actions, so you could definitely chain jobs, but I'm not sure if you could dynamically create children jobs. That's probably the only thing that would not reach parity as of now in terms of GitHub Action API.
I don't want to be repetitive because I mentioned that a couple of times in the previous meetings, and I didn't see your slides, Ruffin, but I mean, I roughly know what your CI is capable of. And I think this whole domain, which commonly in ROS is like CI, our Jenkins farm, the Circle CI you just described, the actions, ROS industrial, these all suffers from one big problem. Everybody brews their own things and makes improvements left and right for certain cases, which is great. But it harms us because we do the same work like N times. And it's not like 2 or 3, it's like 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And I think the big thing which is missing here is we have to settle on, we have to describe what are the use cases we want to support. Then we have to collect what different tools are capable of optimizing, where can we be more efficient, where can we be more flexible, and then really write down what are the cases like which each of the solutions provides. And then come up with what do we want to support as the one thing people will use in the future, which satisfies all these use cases. Because otherwise it's going to be the new thing, will just be a specific specialization of CI, which passes for 2 or 3 or 5 use cases, but there will be others which again don't work with it. I think this is the big thing we have to do a little bit more structured once to come up with all those cases and then figuring out how to support them in the future. We don't have to support all of them in the future, but it needs to be at least this kind of overall direction and structure, and then we can have a path. So we can say, oh, if Ruffin has a great way of parallelizing, for example, some of the tests, that's something where we have to have a roadmap in how to do that in actions in the future, or how to do that in Jenkins. It doesn't matter what we choose, but there needs to be clear what cases we want to support and how we can support them in the future. And then people can contribute to a single solution. Because we are so split over multiple CI solutions, it's all a huge amount of resources being poured in, which don't pay off because everybody has their own baked thing.
I mean, yes and no, right? Because the thing is that those solutions are grown on different platforms, not necessarily for technical reasons. I mean, the reason why GitHub Action is working so well is because Microsoft is giving everyone basically infinite resources right now for zero, and that is very useful for a lot of those open source projects because now you can do much more builds than Travis. Travis, for instance, is trying to keep costs under control by triggering putting some limitation on the amount of jobs you can run cron based. And so if you look at industrial CI, if you look at Circle CI, Travis, GitHub Actions, those 3 are not there because we don't agree on a platform. It's just that I was there, 10 years ago when Travis started, and Travis was extremely fast and non-flaky. And I saw a lot of people moving from Travis to GitHub Actions recently for non-technical reasons. It's just that right now, because Microsoft really want to get this market, well, they're just much more generous. And I think that, as much as I agree, probably we want to line up a few interesting features that everyone agree on, and maybe make some draw some comparisons. The bottom line is that in 3 years, we are going to move again because the next new player is going to need to be more generous than whoever is currently dominating the market. And unless we come up with a global API that is open source and will prevent us from having to do the rework, then we'll do it again, and it's okay because the engineering time that you spend is going to be balanced out by the fact that you don't need to pay for anything.
No, Thomas, that's not my point. My point is not the technology platform we use. If it's GitHub Actions or Azure or like Travis or Circle, I don't care. It could be Jenkins. I don't mind that part. The fundamental problem is that you have a hard time objectively quantifying the difference between your action approach currently, the Jenkins build farm, and the Circle CI from Raffin. You can't currently not easily say, because you need a lot of expertise how the things are doing and no internal knowledge how they are different, what each of them offers as features and what each of them cannot offer as a feature, and what may be trade-offs for like how fast is a certain way of approach. And that needs to be like more structured. There's fine if there are different solutions to it, but you need to be able to go to, for example, the approach Raffin says, and can say, hey, we have a document which writes down what kind of CIs we have imagined and we can think of, and it says we are offering feature A, C, and E, and E we are very fast, but on feature C we are really poor because we don't do a certain thing, right? You need to be able to objectively compare them, and I think that's the big piece missing. If we then align at the end to one, that would be wishful thinking, of course, right? And it could be that the technology changes in the future, but then if somebody else comes up with a new thing in a few years, he can say, well, we already cover 4 out of the 6 features. If you want 2 of the features which we don't cover, you should use one of the other approaches. And that objective comparison doesn't exist.
I mean, I agree with you, Dirk. We're getting kicked out, but honestly, having a fair benchmark between those approaches would be good.
Yeah, honestly, this is a super useful discussion for us to have, and maybe we should have like a CI roundtable specific discussion at some point.
Yeah.
I do unfortunately have to stop the recording now because I also have to go.
Let's follow up on the next working group meeting.
Yeah, maybe the next working group meeting, or maybe we need a specific discussion around CI. I think they're even more interested parties. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate it. See you again in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Emerson.
Thank you,
everyone.
See you.
Yeah.
Zach?
Alexa.